What is up, guys? I am Andres.
It is RB3.
And this is the Meaning of Podcast, where we break down your favorite film directors and the deeper meaning within their films. And we're doing a very special director, a director that doesn't have a lot of movies, but I feel like he's already like a household name.
Yeah.
Mainly because he's got an Oscar. Let's face it. An Oscar win will get you pretty famous pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I think it's a well-deserved win. I think it's a well-deserved projection of his career, if I could say that. Because Barry Jenkins is that guy, and I feel like Barry Jenkins is an incredibly talented director. And this is another director that I personally feel like maybe we can revisit in the future, just because he's on the come up so much that we can go back and talk about his new movies, because I'm sure he's going to make a lot of great stuff.
Yeah, hopefully. I mean, I know he literally retired after he made his first movie, so I'm hoping he doesn't find a reason to retire again. But it looks like he's busy. Looks like he's active. I'm super excited to talk about this. I mean, I love Moonlight. Moonlight is definitely one of those ones that I didn't love. So you're gonna keep saying I didn't like that movie, but I got Moonlight was, when I saw it initially. When you see
I saw it with you.
Yeah, when you see things initially, you feel a different type of way about it. You know what I mean? Like when you see things for the first time, I just have personal problems with it. That's my thing. That's why I never, bro, you always are like, yo, where's the tweet? Where's the tweet? I never tweet about shit because I personally don't like to give my opinion when I first leave the movie. Because what?
I've seen you tweet about a lot of shit.
Well, there's a lot of things you see me not tweet about. When's the last time I tweeted a movie?
Spider-Man, when I saw it with you.
Oh, but did I actually give a review about it, or did I make a joke? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that's what I'm saying. I don't, because when I first see a movie, it usually be some personal shit to why I don't like it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. For Moonlight, I just didn't like all these fucking white people telling me how great of a movie it was. It's a masterpiece. Let me get all these white people coming up to my face. Oh, you want to talk about Moonlight? Bro, I especially going to USC. At USC, it's either Do the Right Thing. It's Do the Right Thing. That's the main black movie they show. Now, since Moonlight came out, they added Moonlight to that. Get Out's the new one. I couldn't get enough of all these white film school people coming up to me.
So when you saw it,
Moonlight, when I literally just saw you talking about Interstellar with that dude. Can I talk about Interstellar? But that's my thing. But when I saw it initially, I didn't, and plus I had different expectations for it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was going to be more of a hood movie, a gangster movie, and I was less concerned with the content of what it was saying, and more about the formal execution, the visual aesthetic, and the music, and the auditory visual experience. Mm-hmm. But as I have watched it several, because like I said, I've seen it probably 6 times since being in film school.
It's on Netflix too, by the way.
Yeah, they added it on Netflix. They had it on Amazon Prime for a long time. I think they started on Amazon Prime. And yeah, when I first saw it initially, I was disappointed because I wanted Boys in the Hood with gay people, and it wasn't that. But then when I realized what the movie was actually doing, what it actually had to say, and the artistry in the filmmaking, from the editing to the music to the cinematography to the costume design choices to the production design, all around, it's ultimately, to me, it's a masterpiece, Wow. I probably even put it at the top, top ones of that year.
Bro,
so.
Maybe it's just because I remember watching it with you, and I felt the same way. I was just like, it was all right.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt, too.
Yeah, I mean, you got to watch it. I mean,
should I watch? I haven't watched it again.
You should watch it about 6 times.
But to watch it 6 times to like it?
Well, also, what you got to do is, because, literally, I watched it one time for an editing class.
But everything you said.
I watched it one time for a screenwriting class.
But everything you said, can I separate those two, though? Or am I not allowed to?
Separate
because
what?
I think everything you said, the cinematography is incredible, the music's incredible, the acting is incredible, but I still was like, eh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just depends on to me, what really convinced me of what this movie's power really came down to was understanding that when I first walked out of it, I thought the first part was hot, the second part was hot, the third part left me cold. Why just
because it's three.
Yeah, it's broken into 3 episodic.
You know what? And I know we're breaking the rules, but let's start with Moonlight.
Well, yeah, we might as well. We're already 10 minutes into discussing it.
So the movie, break it down for people. So the movie is break down into 3 parts of his life.
Yeah, 3 age groups.
What's his name again? I forget.
Chiron. Yeah. So the first part is Little, second part is Chiron, third part is Black. the first part is the part that a lot of people talk about, the Mahershala Ali segment of the movie where Little, the youngest version, won him an Oscar for being the third.
Deservedly so.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you can see the kind of actor he is by taking such a minimal part but making the most of it. So the first part is surrounding Little and his being a young kid without a father figure and with a mother who abuses crack. How he kind of is taken under the wing of Mahershala Ali's character, and kind of shown how to be confident, and how to be a man, and how to be okay with the feelings that he's feeling with his sexuality.
And the second part is
second part's in high school, and the second part is when he meets Kevin, who's played by the same homie who's in When They See Us.
Jerome, have you? Oh my God, yeah. I'm about to kill you on air. Have you finished it?
I haven't finished it.
Oh my God!
What do you want me to do?
Episode 4 is like a different level, bro. Like the first 3 are really like amazing. Episode 4 is like a feature film, and it's just like the best movie I've seen all year. Yeah. I'm not tripping. It's the best movie I've seen.
Well, yeah,
it's one episode.
I'm not gonna fucking find a reason to cry like on a random Wednesday afternoon, man.
You gotta do it though.
I'll watch it eventually, man.
You gotta strap yourself in the chair and make sure you can't change the channel.
I'll watch it eventually.
Do it, man. But Jarrell Jerome, this is his first role, and him in When They See Us, especially episode 4, because it's just all him in the last episode. Episode 4 is Oscar good.
Yeah,
Oscar good, man. Like if he doesn't win the Emmy, it's like a travesty. Incredible. Yeah. But either way,
a lot of people say Mahershala Ali.
That's what I'm saying. He's going up against Mahershala from True Detective. And did you see True Detective season 3?
I saw the first episode.
He's pretty damn amazing in that too, Mahershala. But I still feel like Jarrell Jerome hit different levels, man.
Yeah.
But that's a whole different topic. If I had to pick, I would probably pick Mahershala on the better performance. But I just feel like I don't think I've ever been destroyed as much.
Oh man,
as Jarrell.
So look at that, man.
Kill me.
I'm trying to
kill me. I'm not even tripping, bro. Like that's the most like. I legit don't cry in any movies. I'm not a crier. I'm not an emotional dude when it comes to like films and stuff. But my God, I was like, this it's killing me. But either way, he's great in this movie as well. Small part.
Yeah. And small part in terms of screen time, but big part in terms of relevance to the story. Yeah, because the third part is
grown up.
At the end of the second act, he gets Chiron hits the bully over the head with a chair, ends up going to jail, and part 3 is like his post-juvenile life. And how he like yoked up. He basically became the embodiment of what Mahershala Ali's character was. The first part,
except like
different.
90 pounds heavier of muscle.
Yeah. I mean,
homie was enormous. I forget the actor's name.
Yeah, he was in Predator.
He's in Predator. Yeah, a movie that I kind of liked.
Yeah, I don't understand that one. Man. How can you say you like Predators but don't
funny.
Like?
It was funny. But don't like what? Don't like
half
Moonlight?
The shit you say, Moonlight, yeah.
How can I like Predators but not Moonlight?
Yeah. I wasn't even going to make that comparison. I didn't even want to think you were actually thinking that, but you don't actually
it's
like
not that I don't
Moonlight.
like Moonlight. It's just that I don't have the same feelings that most people have.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
I think
like everything you said about the movie is so true. It's incredibly shot, incredibly acted, but I just didn't get the emotional aspect of it as much as I wanted to, or the plot aspect of it, if that makes sense.
Well, see,
and I feel like that's okay.
Yeah, I think
you could still respect art on a technical level.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think even beyond the technical level, I think the story in and of itself is a little more complex, a little more than it's kind of a harder thing to jump into than just like watching and expecting like a central plot. Per se, I think
that's a good point. Yeah,
I think this movie,
the format of the movie.
Yeah, the format of the movie isn't intuitive to like having a straightforward linear plot, but nor do I think is trying to achieve that. I think what impresses me the most about this movie on a writing level, and to some extent like on a plot level, but it's not really about plot per se, is that each story has the same kind of structure in terms of like how he visits his mom at this point during the story, how he meets whoever's like the main influence on him during the story. How he kind of deals with the personal tragedy and battle and fight with that person, and how it's overcome. You see that in part one when he's getting bullied immediately, like when the film starts. How the camera kind of follows Mahershala Ali with like this smooth kind of steady cam shot, but it cuts immediately to Little running from a group of kids who are about to jump him, and not jump him and bullying. They're just kind of chasing each other. But these kids even back then knew something was a little bit different about Little, and they made fun of him and bullied him from it back then. And then that's communicated in the second part when the main bully dude, but I hate calling these dudes bullies because these dudes really look like hood dudes. And I think that's also why I liked it a little more over time too. I really did realize it was a lot more of a hood movie than I gave it credit for initially, because he is literally in a trap house at one point, and like all the kids in the high school are like real looking shooters. But even in the middle, when that one dude's forcing Kevin to keep hitting Chiron, and he gets knocked out on the ground, and he puts his face in the ice, and he has to reclaim that moment by hitting the dude with the chair. It's the same structure as the first story. In the third story, that's where it gets trickier, because that section is following Black, who is like an ex-prisoner, and same thing. And when they see us, the same thing in this movie. It really demonstrates how the post incarcerated life really has a psychological toll on somebody. In this movie, he really has like nothing. Like he really feels so empty inside that he literally has no contact with anybody from his life. Like he visits his mother, like all of that stuff. But then unlike the first two acts where it's like direct bullying and like directly overcoming it in like this emotional cathartic way, it's like him reliving meeting Kevin again at that restaurant and driving back, that scene when they're driving back, having that conversation in the car. So it is very, I feel like it's very multi-layer of what the film's trying to do on the plot structural level and on the character level. But it's very reflective. And I think I think after watching this movie like a lot of times, you really pick up on like the little things that keep reoccurring. It's like it becomes really smart and really like in and of itself a really greatly told story. So
yeah. And who plays the mother again? Her name is Naomi Harris.
Naomi Harris, yeah, Oscar nominee for that.
That's right, she was.
She was originally supposed to be on set for I think like for 2 weeks, and then they only had her for 3 days.
I remember hearing about that.
Yeah. So it's a dope movie, man. I think everything that this movie represents is like it definitely gets better. Like I think for me, I was also a big La La Land fan back in 2016. So I was a little more team La La Land for Best Picture. Back then, I was definitely rooting for that.
I mean, you're looking at one of the biggest La La Land fans right now, bro.
Yeah, no, we all love La La Land.
Oh, man.
Yeah, La La Land for life.
I adore that movie.
Yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
I still know every song by heart.
Yeah. No, it's definitely like an entertaining like piece, like 100%.
I was definitely Team La La Land, too.
I was Team La La Land. But I think in retrospect, I would have been Team Moonlight. If I'm talking today.
but it gave us one of the greatest Oscar histories, one of the greatest moments in Oscar history. Just with the whole the Jordan Horowitz, the one of the producers of La La Land, pulling up the car, everyone freaking out, not knowing what to do. And it's like Moonlight. It's Moonlight. Moonlight won it. It just felt like a moment in sports, or like a moment that was scripted.
Yeah, it was scripted.
You conspiracy theory guy?
I don't think it's a conspiracy theory.
Oh, come on! You really think so?
It's easily like have to have the camera perfectly right in focus, like right at the right time. Like, come on now.
Oh, come on, man! You know how many cameras they have there? But either way, it was incredible. It was hysterical, to be honest. You didn't think it was funny?
I think it was funny, yeah.
Oh my
that was great.
God, I thought it was hysterical.
I felt bad for La La Land.
That's what I'm saying. The fact that they're already giving their speech and stuff.
Yeah.
You've seen the images of like everyone's reaction to it. My favorite reaction is the Ryan Gosling reaction, where he's just like laughing in the background, because that was my reaction. I was laughing just because I thought it was like this. it's a very ironic kind of moment. It's almost like out of a comedy where they're just like, well, it's like, thanks, Mom. Well, actually, it was Moonlight, and it was like, oh, cool. Like it just felt funny. Like it was just a very goofy, crazy moment.
That's iconic, 100%. I love how they use that as like the promo for like the year after.
Yeah,
like, guess what craziness is going to happen at this year's Oscar?
Exactly, and it didn't work at all. Oscar viewership is still going down.
TV viewership is going down, so you can't really.
That's true. But let's talk a little bit about Mahershala's character. What's his name in the movie again? I'm looking it up right now.
I'm not sure.
Juan. Which I guess means he's like, Dominican.
Probably Cuban.
Cuban?
Yeah, Florida, South Florida.
Oh, bro. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of Dominicans in Florida.
But I mean, like, in this particular area of Miami, I think this is supposed to be, like, I mean, it could be Dominican. I mean, Dominicans are usually pretty dark, too.
That's what I'm saying.
But
that was my assumption. Just
but either way, I think his character in this movie is obviously a drug dealer, slings crack to Little's mom.
That rotating shot of him. Was it a rotating shot or is it a car shot? I forget.
Oh, which one?
The one where he's like...
Oh, yeah. That's
where
like
it follows him. It's like a oneer.
Yeah.
That oneer stands out, but you get everything out of his character in that one scene.
Yeah. How he takes care of business, how he handles people. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a really good, like, kind of father figure for Little.
That was my question to you. Just because personally... me watching the movie, and if you pitch that to me off, like, without watching the movie, personally, I feel like, oh, that's kind of... And I also felt this way watching the movie at first, where you're just like, this random dude this random crack dealer becomes a father figure to this random little kid. Like, it almost feels like, oh, that's low-key, like, that's not a good look, right? And that's how I felt, where I was just like, that's kind of dangerous in the sense of, like, why is this grown-ass crack dealer hanging out with this little kid?
Oh, yeah.
At least that's how I felt at first. I was just like, oh, I don't know if that's a good thing.
I mean, that's reality for
it
a lot
is.
of kids.
I understand. And that's kind of where I saw where his heart was coming from.
Yeah.
I started to be a little bit more positive on it.
It's also Mahershala Ali's character feeling remorseful and regret for the fact that he is in fact selling his mom crack, that he is kind of destroying the community that he's living in, and it's kind of like his internal kind of redemption for it.
Yeah.
And even as much as, you know, the scene where he's baptizing them in the ocean to some, not exactly baptizing him, teaching him how to swim, but the symbology is that Mahershala Ali's character is baptizing Little, giving him a new life because a new life is something that Juan is fighting for in and of himself. That's why he sees so much of himself represented in Little. Even though they have different, like, sexualities, he still sees being the outsider, you know, being different than the others and kind of standing up to that test. So.
Yeah, and I really feel like Janelle Monáe.
Yeah,
she is also a centerpiece in his life, and she grounds him in a sense, right?
Yeah,
giving him a different aspect to life. I feel like if he didn't have her, maybe he wouldn't feel a certain way. Maybe he would be a little bit more rough around the edges and not positive.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe it's just because I liked her character in the movie so much that she really stood out to me.
100%. Yeah.
She has a very small role in the movie, but I feel like she stands out.
Yeah. I think it's cool that she was in 2 Best Picture nominees in 1 year. Hidden Figures.
Yeah.
I think literally the 2 first things she's acted in too. But yeah, it speaks very powerfully. I mean, just speaking to like the artisticness on a technical level of this film, the kind of blue tone cinematography on the exteriors and the interiors give it like this very ethereal, kind of cold and breaking like aesthetic to it that kind of makes you feel and enthralled in like the discomfort of it. And I think but it also is reflective of like the moon, the moonlight itself, right at night. That kind of when you're out alone and by yourself, like, you know, like Chiron and Kevin were in the second part of this movie, it's looking onto the moonlight. You know, that's when you're most vulnerable. That's when you're most yourself. And this movie is about the fight for being vulnerable, the fight for owning your sexuality and owning your personality. So I think it does a really great job at like communicating and displaying like all of that just visually. And even editing-wise, like I said, the first two parts move at a really fast speed, and the third part moves at a really slower speed. But I think in that sense, it moves slower because it's showing you the discomfort and the pain that the oldest character, Black, is dealing with as an adult and not being himself and not being able to express himself the way he would like to. So it all kind of plays into how everything in this movie, from the like I said, the camera, the editing, the music, it all plays into the central themes that are trying to be communicated through through this movie.
Yeah, and I gotta correct myself. He is Cuban, by the way. Apologies to
I knew it was
Cubanos.
I knew it was Cuban.
Out there. I know there's I have a little bit of a relationship with Miami, not as much as you, because you just recently came back. Yeah. But I've been there a few times, just in passing. Yeah. And I know basically my connection is the Colombian connection, and just how family visits Miami all the time. Right. Because there's a lot of Colombians in Miami, and that's the connecting flight between Colombia and in the U.S. It's Miami. So there's a lot of Cubanos there. There's a lot of Colombians there. It's a very diverse city. You just came back. Give us a little rundown, bro. What'd you think of Miami? I'm going to Miami.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that too. That shit was lit. But I will say, you didn't
get the Moonlight experience of Miami.
I did a little bit because, man, my boy Mike, I love my man Mike Simpson, man. I love my boy Mike. But he is one of those dudes, like, if you go to any major city with him, he'll want to go to the hood of that city.
Why?
It's just him.
Oh, he just wants to see how the hood looks like in each city?
I mean, we're both from Compton, so, like, we live right down the street from each other, pretty much. But, yeah, I mean, we went to this place called Overtown. Like, it's right by downtown or whatever. It's, like, one of the historical Black places or whatever. But that shit, like, ran down. No offense to anybody who's in Overtown or near that. But, like, we went near like Broward County, like we were like through all the, where Kodak Black and them is from. Mm-hmm. I'm like, dog, man, what we doing here? But that's what I feel like. I mean, I honestly, when I was down there, I thought it'd be dope. I would want to see a Bad Boys type movie, but like in the hood of Miami. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like that's what I really want to see.
Interesting.
But that'll take a little time. I want to put Will Smith in it too. Yeah. But have him die in the first 30 minutes.
I was a part of in Phoenix. My only connection to the hood is I was a part of a little community there. It was like the Mexican. That's kind of the other connection I have. And then obviously when I was in McAllen, it was like a little hood area. But I didn't live there, but I had a little community there. But yeah, Miami, man, it's different, right? It's cool.
Miami was dope. I mean, one lady said some racist, like we had an Uber driver.
No way.
She said some mad racist shit.
Wow, yeah.
I wasn't too keen to it.
Yeah, there's still a lot of white people there, man. It's still Florida.
Well, she wasn't white. She was I think she was Colombian.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but she was like, what? I don't even want to say it, bro.
Don't say it.
But yeah. But it was just.
I was gonna say she was. You're blaming me, RB3?
No, I'm not blaming you. No, she wasn't Colombian. I'm sorry. She was Cuban. She was Cuban, not Colombian.
There you go.
But she was like Black woman. I was like, all right. I don't want to hear enough.
Come on now.
But otherwise, great city, Miami. Miami's dope. I want to go to Miami again, man.
Yeah.
We went when all the HBCUs was out for break. So like Howard was out. All those schools was out. Mm-hmm. So it was just like a wall of Black people on Miami Beach.
Yeah.
It was dope. It was a good time.
Yeah, but it does have like a pretty big African American community over there too.
Yeah. I mean that's really. I mean again, like kind of mentioned like Kodak. X was from Florida.
That's
a lot of up and coming rap artists are coming out of Florida right now, so that's definitely like a hot spot. But a lot of what they rapping about is like the real stuff that they represent. So, salute to Florida, man.
It is. It's such an interesting is an interesting word to use. State, to say the least. Florida.
Florida, man.
You saw Crawl. Crawl is like.
Oh yeah, with them Gators.
Yeah. I mean, my roommate and a good friend of mine is from Florida, and he was talking to me about it, and it's an interesting aspect of getting the two perspectives of like a black guy growing up in Florida, or a Cuban or Latino or Colombian homie growing up in Florida, or Puerto Rican. There's a ton of Puerto Ricans out there, or Dominicans. There's a ton of them out there.
Right.
Versus like a white dude growing up in Florida, or because my homie's like super white, and he grew up in a very like let's go hunting out there and shoot them like that kind of community, like super stereotypical like white dude Florida, and how he's come around from that, because that's not him at all.
Yeah, that's funny.
But it's an interesting to get different perspectives from Florida, because I feel like it's always the punchline in every joke.
Yeah,
deservedly
man.
so.
Yeah.
Florida Man, for example, is one of the best jokes in any TV show ever. And it's just a lot of crazy shit happens down there, man.
Yeah,
There is a lot of racism in Florida. There is a lot of like weird laws in Florida. That's where homie Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, standing your ground.
That's one of the most controversial things that's ever happened in Florida, and that's the idea of it, right? It's this communities that are kind of working together and not working together, and kind of battling with each other, right? It's the rich white people. Trump has his like freaking doesn't he have his world is out there in Florida? You haven't heard about this?
No.
So Trump has like his own little like community of like right winger, super, corporate ideology world, and he has like this entire like estate.
It's like a golf course or something?
Yeah, it's like a golf course, something like that, and it's all set out there, and there's like this. It's like a hardcore.
I know what you're talking about.
I forget what it's called.
What you're talking about.
And he goes there like every 2 weeks or something to like hang out with people.
Yeah. It's just for like if you make over $1 million, you could like
exactly. That's what it is. I forget what it's called, but that's also in Florida.
Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, Mar-a-Lago.
But that's in Florida. It's a weird state to say the least. But you get a little bit of what. I still feel like the Trayvon Martin case, it blows my mind. I feel like it should blow everyone's mind.
Yeah. I mean, that's just improper policing, police investigation work.
Yeah.
And it really, I think, this is one of the first instances that really broke through for the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah. And when you hear the story, it really is baffling, bro.
Yeah.
Because almost everyone, African American can relate to that. Mm-hmm. The idea of a kid who's just walking, and just because he's walking and he has a hoodie on, that classifies it as hold your ground. Yeah. Like that's baffling.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you have personal stories that you could tell about, like you've been through the same thing, or
I mean, for sure.
And I know on a much lesser note, I remember in Phoenix, I was I also had a hoodie on, and I was walking. It was winter, and I had a lady. This is a personal story, going off topic, but I had a lady come up to me and just go off on me, and she was in a van, and I was walking inside this neighborhood, and I was just doing it because I had to get out of the house, and she went off on me. And it was just for walking, and she said she was calling the cops.
No, man,
I'm not tripping. Like, this was real, and it's times 10 for everyone in the African American community.
Yeah, man.
So it is this ideology of like there's so many different communities growing up in Florida. So what Little goes through is something that he might not relate to with someone else in the same state or the same city.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. I really do feel like Barry Jenkins poured his heart into this movie when it comes to portraying Miami and portraying Florida.
Yeah, I mean he's from Florida. He's from Miami. He's from like the area that he's like kind of talking about. Yeah. So it's very, very much.
It's very personal.
Yeah.
And he based Naomi Harris's character on his mom.
Yeah.
Which is kind of hardcore.
Yeah.
It's really
even
hardcore.
though Barry Jenkins himself is not homosexual, he used his coming of age experiences and translated that to an LGBTQ kind of context, which may have made it more commercial.
But that's another thing that I talk to me about that. Why do you think it made it more commercial?
I just think. I mean, again, maybe this is why I didn't like the movie initially, but it's an easier excuse for white people to see this movie about a Black coming of age story. If there's a window in for them, that's not necessily like excess. You know what I'm trying to say.
I know exactly what you're trying to say. I just want you to say it.
I'm just saying they ain't trying to see Black people unless they gay or slaves or something. So like that, it just made it a little more accessible.
Do you still feel that way?
That story. Yeah, I do feel that way a lot. I mean, Black Panther was different. Us is different. Get Out is different.
Yeah.
But beyond that, is a lot of the same slave movies are still coming out. In fact, I saw one slave movie on Twitter. I didn't even look at the trailer for it, but I saw one tweet was like, "Yo, make sure you support this the same way y'all supported Black Panther." And one of my buddies quote tweeted it and was like, "Yo, like if it's another movie about slavery, I ain't watching that shit. Period." And I 100% agree with that. I am not watching no more slave movies.
Well, can you say the same about this kind of movie, LGBT Black people movie?
No, I mean it's not necessarily like as like overdone as the slave movie.
Okay.
There is. I mean, I think every culture has their version of an LGBTQ kind of stories.
Sure.
That are told throughout time. But we have The Color Purple that came out in 85.
But it's still, I don't know, man, because I still feel like it's very specific.
It is very specific.
In the African-American community, that as liberal as you can be, you still say, yo, fuck them gay people, though. Like, it's still like a kind of a sore topic.
Like homosexuality.
Yeah.
Or like homophobia.
Yeah.
I think some Black people are homophobic. You
don't think it's. I mean,
I wouldn't say it's a majority.
It was 3 weeks ago, where it was the anniversary of the transgender girl. I forget from where, from Chicago, where she got killed. She got brutally murdered, and it's always this ideology of like masculinity within the African American community. I'm projecting right now, so make sure you correct me.
Yeah.
You don't feel that way?
I mean, I think some people. I think it's the same. I think it's probably the same amount of white people who are or homophobic as Black people to some extent. I just think
that could be true.
It's just I mean, there's
but this is what the whole movie's about, though. RB3. It's literally
it's about
masculinity.
Like,
masculinity within the African American like community and the hood.
Well, it matters. It matters a little. It definitely matters a little more in Black communities, and I think there are a lot of people who are kind of rewound in time, especially for Black people from the South. And Florida is the South, so that's like definitely a spot that like you wouldn't see that necessarily be as accepted. Yeah, I mean, I feel like overall, it's a concern for the Black community to not downplay homophobia as much as we do. To some extent, I don't think we do. I don't think most people do. I don't think most African American people are homophobic, nor do I believe that that's like a common thing. But I do believe that it is ingrained in us to be very close to the Bible. It is ingrained for us to be very centered on these beliefs that were instituted on us by the uninformed and the uneducated and the white communities that enslaved us. So it's for what homophobia is in the Black community, it is massively contributed to the demasculization that the white people have imposed on us through slavery and post-slavery, that makes a lot of Black people feel like masculinity is like the most important. A lot of Black people who are homophobic, because again, it's like I wouldn't say it's the majority of people.
But do you feel like
it's imposed upon us from being demasculated?
Do you feel like your lens might be a little bit LA colored though? Because I feel like LA is just a different planet, dude. If I talk about the African American community in Phoenix or the African American community in South Carolina or something,
well, I think
you don't feel like that's different. Like you said, the South.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of white people who are just equally as homophobic.
But maybe I'm just projecting my personal like the Latino community.
Yeah.
Where if you watch TV or if you live in LA, how would you say? And you could be like, oh no, Latino people. No, that's not true. Like I'm telling you, there is a stigma in the Latino community, huge stigma, and I can openly say that as someone who grew up in Texas and in Arizona, where there's a huge Latino community out there. But they ain't down with they ain't down with that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a stigma that is needed to be overcome in a lot of Black families. But I think overall, especially times have changed as of very recently.
Sure.
And I think,
but maybe I just feel like what you see on TV and what you see like for example, like if I say name a Latino show, a lot of them have like. A lot of them, the Latino guys, and just like, oh, he's a Latino. No, it's like he's Latino and gay. Like it's not diverse enough to be Latino. Like you have to be Latino and otherwise you ain't diverse.
Yeah,
man.
I mean,
otherwise you can play off as a white dude.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's like that kind of frustrates me a little bit.
Yeah,
just because I feel like you're not diverse enough if your skin isn't super dark, because you got if he's gay though, that's diversity. And it's like that's not true. That's not real.
There definitely is a lot. Listen, I think, all power to having
Sure,
more
and this isn't
LGBTQ like movies and all that stuff. Like I love it. I think Moonlight's great and it's a masterpiece.
But you said like, white people ain't trying to see no black people unless it's gay or slavery.
Well, yeah, basically. I mean, well, because I feel like, and maybe it's just through the movies I've been watching and consuming, but a lot of times when there are mainly white leading characters and there is that one black dude, for example, not usually, but a lot of times when it's the one, if you're looking at a rom-com, for example, if you're looking at a rom-com and you have the one best friend and he or she is black, mostly he's usually gay, and that's the only thing that's left to his characterization, or a lot of times, power to Jussie Smollett for cheating the system, but his whole character arc on Empire really didn't come down to being more than him being gay, even on that show. And then he had to make a whole lie about it to get himself a better storyline. So that's why he was frustrated. It's just stuff. It's just, I think particularly in 2014, 15, and 16, it was a lot of black gay content was just like coming at us like fast and furiously, and I'm all for it. I want to watch every single one of it. But it's just like that. I feel like they're more willing to. I feel like a lot of times, especially during that time period, you'll be a lot more likely to see a gay black lead and or a gay black supporting character in something than you would to say just a random white person be white or a random white person be gay and something.
That's
just
exactly
because they're trying
it.
to check the boxes.
I 100% agree with you, and I know we're probably stepping on people's toes right now, and I feel like that's okay. You can have a different opinion, and I don't think necessarily that we're some sort of opposition to that.
Yeah.
But what I kind of want to keep going down that road because I personally feel like it comes from this idea of diversity, right? And what you're showing on screen, like you said, like that's the connection that white people have, and this is something we've talked about for weeks and weeks, if months, if not years. And I want to bring it on air on mic. I feel personally, this is coming from me, and this is my disconnect to it. When I see a show like When They See Us, for example, and I want to see that show succeed on a different level. I just feel like there's a disconnect within Hollywood ideology and almost like a subtext of like political liberalness, where I told you, where it's like, yeah, look at all these women finally, and it's always these rich white women.
Yeah,
it's never like, yeah, power to the girls, and it's like, really? Because all I see is white girls,
right.
And all I see is rich white girls.
Right.
That's the stories we want to tell versus something like When They See Us. I still feel like there's a disconnect, RB3, between African American, the struggle that the African American straight men face when they see us, versus the struggle that the white women face in America. Big Little Lies, for example.
Right.
I still feel like there's this weird, like, it's the same. It's totally the same. Like, we suffer so much. And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
You make 6 figures, girl. Like,
Yeah.
this kid gets stopped on the street and he might get shot. And you're making 6 figures and you're saying it's the same struggle?
Right.
Like, it just...
Wait, didn't somebody get murdered in Big Little Lies?
Dude, I stopped watching it, full disclosure. But it's one of those things where I personally feel like there's this weird tension between like different diverse communities and white women, where it's like people don't get that like white women voted for Trump, man. Like white women ain't diverse.
Yeah, they're the biggest
Like
supporters.
sometimes I feel like that's a disconnect within movies and in like what does diversity mean, RB3? What does diversity mean? If I show you a picture of like 10 white girls and be like, diversity, yeah. Is that really diversity?
That's what they're trying to tell us.
That's what I'm saying. That's not. I don't think that's diversity, man. I'm just being real right now. I don't know. Maybe you just have a response, and maybe I just get mad
agree.
when it's like, well, I don't think it's like you just said, man. Like it's not enough for it to be a hood movie. It's got to be a gay hood movie.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. But then where else are we gonna get the hood movies though? I haven't seen no other hood movies come out since.
I just stepped on so many toes right now. I just stepped on your toes right now, bro. Your toes are burning.
Toes. Nah, I mean,
they're just like throbbing right now.
I do agree. White women, they're not putting in.
But
the
what
work
I'm
that
saying
they
is
should.
like the definition of diversity right now, I personally feel like it's getting all like oddly muddled, where it's like, what are the diverse stories we're telling, and is it just enough to portray the same class or the same race or the same stories, like slavery movies. Like, my God, man, is that really what we're gonna say? Is like, go support it because you're black, and it's like, man, I don't know, man.
Hey, man, that's why I root for Django, man, because Django's the one slave movie that the dude actually wins and kills all the white people. Like, I was disappointed when I saw that Nate Parker movie. What was that joint?
I didn't see it.
Birth of a Nation?
Birth of a Nation.
Yeah, I was like, man, like, come on, let's get to killing these white people. That's what I'm waiting for. We're hour 20 in. Like, literally only 20 minutes of screen time is dedicated to killing white people. Like, I just sat through a whole hour 20 of this boring-ass movie just to get to know white people dying. Yeah. I was pathetic.
I don't know. I just personally feel like Hollywood is trying to create a community, and it's not. I personally feel like it's not working on. I can only speak for myself, right? As a Latino guy, and I don't really see Latino content out there for me, and that's kind of disappointing. That's all. I don't know, and that's just something that.
Nah, I mean, listen. Black content is like on the rise. I'm all for it. Salute to Barry Jenkins for making a masterpiece of Moonlight.
Yeah, and it's still everything we said before still counts.
Like, yeah. No, exactly. Like I think this
but it's just an interesting conversation to have as far as like what Hollywood is portraying. So
yeah, I would like to see some good hood movies. I got some scripts. Studios, I got some ideas. Ep94, give me a call.
Before we go to break, can I say something to you that's gonna kind of pull even more into this? Speaking of Barry Jenkins. You know what his next project is, RB3?
Hey, Beale Street? Oh, Dear White People?
No, his next project, what he's working on now.
No, what's that?
It's a TV show called The Underground Railroad.
Hey, it's a good time.
No, but what I'm saying is like it still goes back to slavery.
Yeah. But at least that's about freeing the slaves.
I know.
Well, actually, we haven't. I don't even think we've gotten an Underground Railroad movie.
No, I honestly, like full disclosure, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, that one I'm down for. But I mean,
it's on Amazon, by the way.
Also, I'm down for.
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Hey, good for Amazon.
There you go.
I'm also down for Black people doing slave movies because I feel like at the very least,
that's good.
At the very least, it's a perspective that we haven't seen before.
Sure.
All history. It's been Spielberg. It's been whoever gets whoever.
I could still counter with Steve McQueen, but you have some interesting thoughts on that too. Though.
Oh, well, I think he's black, but I just don't think he's American, so it's different. But I mean, it's a great movie. I think 12 Years a Slave is like kind of the definitive slave movie.
Yeah,
but
I agree.
Am I going to watch 12 Years a Slave or am I going to watch Django? I'm going to watch Django because he's killing white people.
True. Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to head to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about more about Barry Jenkins and his early career. What is up, guys? We are back talking about Barry Jenkins. Let's briefly mention his first feature, RB3, because full disclosure, he's got quite a few shorts. He's got a lot of shorts. Unfortunately, I don't think I've seen any of these shorts. Yeah. Shorts are always a little tough to watch, but it's still a great start to becoming a director.
Right.
And like you said, he low-key retired after this, right?
Yeah.
After his first feature film, which is Medicine for Melancholy.
Yeah. I think after that, and he did a couple of shorts too after that too. But I think he didn't really. I think I heard him say in an interview when he was promoting Moonlight, they didn't really feel like he was able to do another one. He just didn't have the story, the drive, the motivation to do it.
Interesting.
But Moonlight really brought, the story of Moonlight really brought him out of that. But Medicine for Melancholy, it's a pretty light, breezy film. It really put him on the map. I think, if I'm not mistaken. This film did, some movement on festivals, and then he got put on the list for top 20 filmmakers to look out for. I think back in like 2008 when this came out, 2009. So it put him on the map, and it gave him like kind of a name, but it didn't really make like a lot of money. It's a kind of a small, it's a super low budget, like independent feature that's just about a couple who are just going through San Francisco dealing with their day. They hooked up the night before, and then they're just like spending the whole day together, like through the streets of San Francisco. He was inspired to write this movie because right after college he moved to L.A. And then while he was in L.A. he spent a little time in San Francisco to like kind of, he was, I think when he moved to L.A., if I'm not mistaken, he was an assistant director on some projects. And then he went to San Francisco to have kind of like a creative, moment in and of itself. And then he ended up being so inspired, he wrote like a lot of scripts, and this was one of them. So yeah, it's definitely dope to see this movie kind of come out and kind of represent the cities of San Francisco while also kind of having its own kind of looks and criticisms of it, especially with the main protagonist being black. And dealing with gentrification in the city.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of what the IMDb talks about, the gentrification of San Francisco. And it's interesting because we literally just saw Blind Spotting. Do you remember Blind Spotting?
I didn't see it.
You didn't see it?
I didn't see it with you, at least.
No, I didn't see it with you.
No, but I didn't see it, though.
You haven't seen it?
No.
It's literally about gentrification, about San Francisco or Oakland as well.
Yeah.
And then there's another indie movie that came out. I forgot who released it, but what's it called? Last Black Man in San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
All about gentrification as well. And it's interesting because I've talked to my friends who are from Oakland and San Francisco, and they talked a lot to me about this, about how it's like, oh, that's so true.
Right. Even in Inglewood, like that shit's getting mad gentrified.
But and it's an interesting topic, especially right now because of how much, like you said, Inglewood, like it happens. And San Francisco, man, it's such an interesting city. I'm always fascinated by it, even though I've never been there.
Right.
Just because I feel like that's the city. I was rewatching. Because people always talk about Silicon Valley, Facebook, all this kind of stuff for tech media. That's all for San Francisco, man. Like that's all that area right there. So it's a mix of like those kind of people.
Plus Warriors is becoming the biggest
Warriors,
team in the world.
And I was watching a breakdown just because I was really getting into getting into the Hunger Games franchise. Just because I talked to you about how much I love the Hunger Games and I adore the Hunger Games. But it's interesting when you see District 1. And District 1 is essentially LA. And then District 2 is like Arizona and New Mexico. And District 3 is Northern California, starting from San Francisco up. And it's interesting because District 3 is the technology district. And I feel like, I'm telling you, man, maybe just because I've been watching so many documentaries about like technology, but 20, 30 years from now, San Francisco is going to rule the planet. Like Silicon Valley is going to be like,
I don't doubt it,
the king of the world. Like for real, yeah. It's some real like $1 trillion shit where you're like, yo, that's wild.
Right.
So it's interesting that people make movies about it and how like it's becoming not what it used to be.
Right.
Let's move on to a movie that we both loved and a movie that didn't. I personally feel RB3, and I talked about it on camera multiple times. Didn't get as much love or attention that I feel like it should have gotten, RB3.
Right.
I don't know if you agree with me on that.
100%.
If Beale Street Could Talk came out last year, 2018. It was nominated for a few things, but not enough, in my opinion, RB3.
Yeah, won Best Actress for Regina King.
That's right, Regina King. That's right.
Best Actress in Supporting Role. This movie's a masterpiece. I think this movie is a visually striking, beautiful, on every level, from cinematography
Who
to
shot
editing.
it? I'm literally about to look it up. So
I'm not 100%. I think it's the same DP as Moonlight, if I'm not mistaken. But it's the color, the vibrancy of the colors. Moonlight was very colorful in the sense it was very blue oriented. A lot of the costume design was blue oriented, and the cinematography and the lighting had that like blue incandescent kind of look too. But this movie has a very bright, like vibrant kind of feel to it, very red feel, a lot of browns, a lot of yellows to really emphasize the autumn, the love, the kind of the season for love and all that's supposed to represent. And then compare starkly to the prison sequences when the main character Fonny's in jail, it's very stark, it's very dark, it's very matter of fact, very uncolorful, despite what the rest of the surrounding movie is. The movie does a great job of capturing the visual representation of the words of James Baldwin, who's I would consider the greatest African American writer of all time.
And it's based on his poem, right?
Yeah, based on a book or poem, If Beale Street Could Talk. James Baldwin is a writer who was born in Harlem back in like I have notes here, back in 1925 or 1935 or something like that. But he kind of came up during the Harlem Renaissance, which was the big like kind of change for new writers and creatives coming out of Harlem during that time. And you really saw like a creative renaissance. And James Baldwin was born in 1924, by the way. So he was in his 40s and 50s during the Civil Rights movement, 30s and 40s during the civil rights movement, which Beale Street also kind of takes place in. And a lot of his writing revolved around race in the United States, race in New York and Harlem, which this movie deals with directly, the relationship between religion and race and power, and how all three of those things are kind of intertwined with each other. And I think if Beale Street Could Talk, the movie and this original source material deals with a lot of those same themes too.
Is Beale Street in Harlem? I thought it was
That's in Chicago. But I think what as I said in the beginning of the movie, Beale Street is to represent like all streets in the United States,
yeah.
you know, and particularly when it comes to the story of Fonny and Tish, they are a couple of people who just so happen to fall in love with each other. What love, and this movie does a great job of representing what love is and how you could fall so easily for somebody and stuff like that. And then the downsides of trying to find love in a loveless system, especially a loveless system for the black community. That's what really this movie speaks to a lot. So,
yeah, absolutely. James Laxton is his name. James Laxton.
The DP.
DP.
Nice.
Props to him. He shot Moonlight as well.
Yeah.
Incredibly shot movie too. But this one I feel is even tops it, if that's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that.
I definitely agree with that.
God, this movie is like one of the most beautiful movies of the year.
Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Everything you said, it stands out quite a bit because of that love story and because, like you said, man, the system. This is a movie that I feel connects to what, not exactly like When They See Us, but a little bit when it talks about the unfairness of just being wrongfully accused, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm in prison,
right,
because I've been wrongfully accused, and how that was pretty common. It was that was very common.
Right. Yeah, I think that's that was a common practice for people, for police officers back in that time and during now, to when they have no leads on the case to kind of point somebody in the direction of this person did it. And that's definitely a struggle that African Americans have been fighting for a long time. That's the struggle that a lot of black leaders and black activists have had to fight over time as well. So it's definitely an issue to be addressed. James Baldwin, the writer of the book, he dealt with racial injustice back when he was like 10 years old. He was beaten up by a group of white cops. So his perspective on the police and to power in general is that being more pessimistic. I think that's something that Barry Jenkins communicates very beautifully in this film, in the portrayal of the main kind of police officer here, how he just unfairly picks on Fonny from the very beginning, and then abuses his power to get him locked up. So yeah, this movie speaks echoes to both the writing of James Baldwin and the visual elevation that Jenkins did for this film too.
Yeah, absolutely. And a little bit that this movie touches on that I felt like it was refreshing and interesting and deep and layered was this movie set in Harlem, right?
Yeah.
The connection between the African American community in Harlem and the Latino community.
Yeah,
around that
Pedro
Pascal and Diego Luna, who plays his good friend, and how Fonny speaks perfect Spanish, like legit perfect Spanish. When that scene came up and he was speaking Spanish, I was like, bro, that's perfect Spanish. Yeah. That's wild. And Diego Luna plays like one of his close friends.
Oh yeah, right.
And it's like in a little like Mexican restaurant or Puerto Rican restaurant, whatever it is. I think it's probably Puerto Rican because that's
New
the
York,
community.
Harlem. Yeah.
And the fact that the not really antagonist, but the woman who's falsely accusing him is a Puerto Rican woman.
Right.
And they're trying to find her and go back to Puerto Rico and how there's this weird like push and pull between the two communities. And that scene where Regina King goes to visit boss man, Pedro Pascal, in that restaurant, and how that was like there was a lot of push and pull between those two communities. But I appreciated it because, like I said, it's layered, but you still feel that love for the Latinos there, and this is coming from someone who's not Latino, obviously.
Right.
But maybe that's because I project myself always in every movie. So,
right. No,
and that's the perspective I felt.
Right. No, 100%. Yeah, I think that relationship is I think it really went to show how nice of a guy Fonny is, how while he's dealing with these struggles as a black man, during this time period, he is still open and loving and accepting, and he's hoping that the world will be too. When he's even looking at the apartments, and we see Dave Franco's like the Jewish guy who's renting them the place, the only person who is willing to rent him the place. That's because of how special of especially a nice guy that Fonny is, and the true belief and love that him and Tish represented.
Yeah, but it's also like I personally feel like it's also like a communication between like Regina King's heart, and her heart is such in the right place because she goes to Puerto Rico and she like begs her to please let my son free and speak your truth and let it be true, and her perspective is like, I experienced this awful trauma, I can't re-experience it because she has like PTSD.
Right.
And she breaks down in that scene. And it's a horrifying scene because I feel like, obviously I'm taking Regina King where I'm just like, what do you do in that situation? And then from her perspective, she didn't even know who it was because it's such an awful experience. And everything was, just, it's like bringing her, painful memories back to the surface. And that's the last thing she wants to do.
Right.
So it's that disconnect and that painful push and pull that they have as characters. I forget her name in the movie, but that's the scene that I felt won her the Oscar.
Yeah. I forgot who the actress's name is besides Regina King, but she but that definitely is one of that. I think the scene in particular goes to represent the trial and struggle and how far someone could come to proving someone's innocence. But it'll just be that one little factor, that one piece of personal thing that comes in between justice and injustice that really severs people. That really severs any chance or possibility of innocence. So
her name is Emily Rios.
Okay.
She's Jesse's girlfriend from Breaking Bad. That's where I knew I recognized her from.
Oh, okay.
Because I remember watching the movie and being like, I know this girl. She's remember Jesse's girlfriend?
Right.
From Breaking Bad? In the last season. Because she also had
the kid.
Kristen Ritter.
Kristen Ritter, yeah.
Not
yeah,
Kristen,
yeah.
it's the
She
Mexican
overdosed.
girlfriend.
And the Mexican girlfriend.
With the kid, yeah.
The son, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But yeah,
she's great too.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the other big elements of this movie that was prevalent, at least for my rewatch the other day, was the religious aspect as well. Where,
how can I not talk about that?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
When
that scene is crazy.
Yeah, with the mother of Fonny and the father, and how the mother's like overly religious and
the sisters too. I mean, not the sisters, but
the daughters.
The daughters.
The sisters of Fonny. How overly religious they are, as opposed to how Fonny's father is a little more free spirited. But then how they are so clouded by their religious beliefs that they don't have any compassion for the new birth of like the mother's soon to be grandchild. So it's a very powerful scene. For historical context. James Baldwin, when he was growing up in Harlem, his stepfather David Baldwin was like this Baptist preacher, but he was also incredibly abusive. When James Baldwin was like 14, he was like a member of the church that that his father ran, but he put away his religious beliefs, saying that he said in one of the essays that he wrote. Being in a pulpit was like being in theater. I was behind the scenes and knew how the illusions was worked. So he very much felt like religion was a show, and I think that's kind of one of the themes that was portrayed in this film as well. How the mother's religion is used as a front to mask her deeply flawed beliefs.
Yeah, and it's a very realistic portrayal in the sense that Regina King is. I mean, it's not like she doesn't believe in God or think that's crazy. It's just that she takes it to such an extreme.
Yeah.
Fonny's mom, that it's just like this disconnect between like, yeah, I love God too, but my God, you're taking it too far. It's you know what it is? It's that line in the movie where she says, maybe this is a blessing. And it's like, how can you think that? Like your son is in jail, wrongfully in jail, and you think this is some sort of he should be repentant for having this kid, and it's like that's how his own mother portrays that and those feelings, and it's an interesting conversation between your own connection to faith and religion and community and family, at least personally for me, right? Because that's something that I would connect to, and having the push and pull between extremism and still being someone who's a Christian and being someone who has faith and being someone who believes in God, and not going to that extreme. But it really is that disconnect. That's such a good point. And it's interesting that James Baldwin had that. The Get Down talks about this too. You remember The Get Down?
Yeah, of course. It's a great Netflix show, R.I.P.
Yeah, and it has that kind of conversation as well. I don't know if you
the one with who's the actor from Breaking Bad? Man,
I forget.
He's the homeboy. He's in everything too. But yeah, he's like the preacher. Like the Get Down was all about the preacher's kid. Like
that's what I'm saying.
Pretty much essentially, right?
Yeah.
So it's like with so just that. I mean, the whole thing behind the Get Down, at least to my memory, I haven't watched it in a couple years. But to my memory, at least, the whole thing with his character was that he was being overly religious to hide his insecurities about his wife and his and how his relationship with his family was, and I think that's often a lot of times what religion is used for as a mask for something else.
Oh my God, I can't believe I don't remember his name. Giancarlo Esposito.
There it is.
Yeah, I got it. I just pulled it.
Yeah.
He's in everything.
Yeah, that's what I said.
God.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Homie's in everything. I forget where he's from.
I just say Breaking Bad.
He's also in what is it, Malcolm X?
Is he in Malcolm X?
He's in Malcolm X, yeah.
Which part is he in?
He's in he's in the shootout. He's in the.
Oh, that's right.
He plays one of the homies too. I forget, but
everybody's in Malcolm X. They got like every black person there for that movie.
Yeah, and he's like, where is he from? He's like Dominican or Colombian. Or,
I don't know. He was speaking perfect Spanish in Breaking Bad.
That's what I'm saying. Like he actually is like. Look at his name.
He was in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing.
Yeah,
that's another one he was in. There you go. Look at that. He's Italian. Interesting. But either way, man, that's real. I don't know how you can speak to that too, but that's real, man.
Yeah.
Like no, I'm saying like about the religious aspect of life, where you just feel like I don't know. I don't know if you feel the same way I do. But.
100%. I mean, I think that's at the heart of what James Baldwin and what Barry Jenkins was at the heart of what James Baldwin was saying, and what Barry Jenkins is adapting is that religion ultimately is not a fluent thing. It's a belief. You could believe in whatever you want to believe in, but you don't have to execute on the most insincere, dire parts of religion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just, I think that's ultimately the message that this movie comes down to on that. But it also goes to show how religion is used as a form of power, and I think the overall theme of this movie is power, like how power can influence one man and his soon-to-be family, and how they could put all the time, the money, the resources in the world into trying to free him, but ultimately the powers that be are not gonna unconstrict them.
Yeah.
So
and it's incredibly heartbreaking because you see those scenes where his dad and
Fonny, his dad and the other dude.
The
He's
two
in a lot of
dads.
things. Yeah, when they're at the bar and it's all about the money. Like how
and
we're
they're
gonna
trying,
get the money.
yeah, and they're trying their heart out, and they're doing everything they can, literally everything they can, and and eventually, spoiler alert, it doesn't work. Like it just isn't enough.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of a son growing up without his father, not because of something he did, but because of the system,
Right.
and because of the corruption, and because of the way that America was run, which is incredibly heartbreaking. I'd be remiss, RB3, to not mention the greatest part of this movie, RB3. And as great as the performances are, I think If Beale Street Could Talk has one of the best, not just soundtracks, but one of the best songs, RB3, I've ever heard in any soundtrack. And I'm putting the ever in full caps, like ever, like legit. I mentioned to you before we went on air, Agape is the song, which is the theme of the movie.
Yeah. Hey.
And it's for anyone, I really recommend you look it up. It's the one that they play quite throughout the movie. The entire score is absolutely mind-blowing, but that song is magic. It's spiritual. It's heaven. It's insane. I don't think I've it's just crazy, man. I don't know, but the score to me, I was just like, oh my God, watching this movie, I was like, wow, that's beautiful, that's beautiful, that's a beautiful shot. But when the score kicks in, you're just like, oh man, this is next level.
Yeah. And to be fair, the score in Moonlight was also spectacular too. And I think with this one, it adds a little bit more distinction because it's the jazz influence. Because again, this movie takes place in 1960s Harlem. James Baldwin was writing during the time of the Harlem Renaissance. That was a big kind of uptick for jazz and what's the instruments called? Trombones?
Trombone?
Yeah, trombones. Yeah, I mean all of those, saxophones, all of that. Like the horn section and throughout the entire soundtrack is really what elevates it for me. But it's that free roaming jazz, and I think that it comes directly from the period that it's adapting and the artist that it's adapting from. So
100%. I think it's one of the most beautiful songs ever written on a movie soundtrack. Ever.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I love
it's called Agape.
Yeah, I love Black Panther, but I do wish this one would have won Best Original Score.
Yeah, I do feel like a lot of I agree with you, but I wasn't mad at Black Panther.
No, of course.
I was very happy that because I feel like of what it represents, and I've talked to you about it quite a bit too, and I've talked about it here on this podcast about bringing in hip hop into movie soundtracks is something that doesn't really happen. RB3, it's not really there if you go back and watch movies, and that's kind of why I love that Ludwig Göransson won the Oscar because of what that represents. Because as someone who wants to make movies in the future, I love the idea of hip hop soundtracks, of 808s and beats and claps and all that shit in a movie in a movie score, and not just a movie soundtrack.
Right. I feel you,
and make it a part of the movie. And I think that's what essentially that win represents.
Yeah.
Versus this one it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard, but it's still very traditional. Violin, piano, like it's traditional movie score.
Yeah, 100%.
So even though you're right, this should have won 100%. Anything else on If Beale Street Could Talk before we end the Barry Jenkins episode?
I mean, there's a lot more we could say. I mean, the movie is pretty much like every scene is like a think piece kind of. You could get into something really deep with every single scene.
Yeah. I mean, the scene where she works at the perfume parlor.
Yeah.
The mall or store or whatever that is.
Yeah, 100%.
That's powerful, man. That's a powerful scene. Just because it shows, like you said, power and dominance, and how the white men who come in there
or grab her hand.
Yeah, to show dominance, to show their power, and it's awful. Right. Just little things like that become incredibly awful.
Right.
This movie is insane. It's incredible, and I feel like, what is it, Annapurna? I still feel like Annapurna should have pushed this thing even more.
Yeah, they could have. They definitely could have. I think this is one of the greatest films we saw this decade.
Yeah.
And it's a shame it came out so late in the year.
Yeah.
That people didn't have enough time to celebrate it.
Exactly. 100%. Either way, that concludes our episode on Barry Jenkins. Let us know, what is your favorite Barry Jenkins movie, scene, whatever it may be. I feel like this director has done a lot in such a short career as far as movies. And he's given us some of the greatest performances we've seen in actors. I mean, every performance in If Beale Street, Mahershala in Moonlight. Yeah. Like, these are performances that will live on for a while, and movies that will live on for quite a bit. So make sure you tweet at us. I'm at Squad Leader Ace.
I'm at Director RB3.
And make sure you follow us. Follow us on YouTube. We're at First Cut. Keep supporting Spotify, listens, iTunes listens, whatever it may be that you're listening to us, Anchor, whatever it may be. Yeah. Support the homies. # support the homies.
Support the homies.
For the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Andres.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out. Peace out, guys.